Welcome to the show, Fuck Loneliness. I'm your host, Sharon Pieczenik, and in each episode, I invite a guest on and we discuss the nature of loneliness. Let's hop right into it. All right, well, hello. This is Marjorie Lewis that we're speaking to today. She is a licensed massage therapist for humans and animals, and also an animal communicator, which I think is really exciting and unique.
Makes for an interesting mix, never boring.
I was first starting to think about loneliness and, I want to talk to someone who, thinks about how people relate to their pets and if pets are the answer to loneliness. And then when I heard that you could actually speak with pets, I was like, wait, I'm actually fascinated to find out, do pets feel lonely and what's their relationship to loneliness?
Animals don't very often express the specific emotion or sensation of loneliness to me. And that got me thinking about the origins of that. And I think it boils down to the fact that animals experience their reality in a different way than humans. So animals tend to be very much focused in the present moment. And humans tend to spend a lot of time dwelling in the past and in an imagined future. And I think that animals tend not to experience loneliness in the same way as we do because they're in the moment. And when you're in the moment, you don't have a comparison.
Right.
To say, right now, I feel lonely compared to when I had companions. The animals just don't tend to do that type of comparison, right and wrong. The polarity doesn't exist, the right and wrong, the lonely and happy, and they just accept what is in that moment, even if it's unpleasant. And so I've had them more often share sensations of boredom, more so than loneliness. So in need of physical activity or mental activity, but not necessarily right in this moment I'm feeling I need companionship. And I think that loneliness in one way can be interpreted as lack of companionship or lack of connection. And so would you agree? What is your definition of loneliness?
Right. So I really am trying to figure out what loneliness is, because as I look at it more and more and closer, I realize loneliness feels often for me like complete heartache and pain. But when I step back from it, sometimes I realize, wait, no, I'm actually really bored. And so it's interesting you talk about the boredom. And then sometimes I step back from it and I say, I just really want a good conversation with a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I step back from it and say, no, I just want someone to touch me. So it's like loneliness really is dynamic.
Yes, and interconnected with so many other things. It's not just one feeling. I think it's connected to so many other feelings.
Yeah.
For humans and animals.
Right. And I thought that maybe if I had a pet, it would take care of my loneliness. And I wasn't sure about that.
So that is a fascinating connection. And being an animal lover, my first personal feeling would be to say, absolutely, people are less lonely when they have pets. I know if my pets were gone and I was living completely alone, I would be so lonely. But the research doesn't support that. If you look at the research on pet owners and loneliness, pet owners do report the same levels of loneliness as non-pet owners, which I find fascinating. But I also think that loneliness, the feeling of loneliness, is not connected directly to being alone.
Right.
So I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but being in a crowd of people, yet feeling completely alone.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I have had that. Mm-hmm.
And so a person who is going through a period of loneliness could be doing that in a house full of pets.
Yeah.
Okay. And perhaps if the pets were gone, they would feel even more lonely.
Right.
But I don't think that having the companionship of a pet will stop the feelings of loneliness,
Right.
because our human experience of loneliness is our own perception of, do I have connection? And so I'm an introvert. I can be home completely alone and never feel lonely,
Oh, wow.
because as an introvert, I still feel connected to my others, my friends and my family and my pets, but I don't need them to be in the room with me to experience that connection and feel comforted by
Right. And I'm more of an extrovert.
it.
And
So how do you experience loneliness?
yeah, it's hard. I mean, I live alone without pets, without a roommate, and I take that Myers-Briggs test, and it tells me I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert. And so I definitely know that I need people around to kind of nourish my spirit in a way. And so it's not easy living solitary life for me.
And so my sense is, for you, if you added a pet to your household,
Yeah.
it might enhance your quality of life or your experience, because you would have the added companionship,
Right.
but you would still yearn for the human connection.
Right.
And
Right.
so it might not appease your loneliness. The pet might, if you had a dog, you might be forced to leave your house more often to go out and walk your dog, in which case you would make more social connections,
Right.
meet your neighbors, talk to friends, and therefore feel less lonely. But I don't think it's the pet that appeases the loneliness. I think it's the other connections, the human connections, that
Right.
actually heal loneliness. Would you agree, being an extrovert in that way?
Yes, and I do know that when I had cats, the touch was part of it, that I
Mm-hmm.
loved having something to touch and something that wanted to touch me. I've never had a dog. I've babysat dogs before, and I really loved their company, and I felt less alone. But there was still part of me that wanted humans around as well, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, with the pets, do they pick up on their owner's loneliness, and what do they think about their owner's loneliness?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know that they would put loneliness. So let me just clarify. When I communicate with animals, I'm using telepathy and empathy.
Mhm.
So I am receiving images from them in my mind's eye. So I might sit with my eyes closed and get connected with the pet, and then ask them to share their thoughts and feelings. But for me, it's almost like watching a video download. I
Mm,
start to receive images, either still images or little video clips, and with it comes the emotion
okay.
and also the physical sensations I feel in my own body. So if the animal has an injury in their left shoulder, I would feel the pain in my left shoulder.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I dialogue with my clients, is I translate these nonverbal bits of information, the emotions, physical sensations, and imagery, into words for the client. And then I take their questions, thoughts, and ideas and translate it into picture form for the pet. So I act like a foreign language translator between a verbal being and a nonverbal being.
Right.
And so when I'm receiving that information, I don't often pick it up as loneliness. I pick it up as other things. So if the human were feeling lonely, the animal might say to me, I see changes, I observe changes in their physical demeanor. So the posture has changed, the brightness in the eyes have changed, and they would be showing me the changes that they're observing. And then they would say that their energy has shifted. So
Mm,
they don't use the same words, obviously, that we do, but the concept that they would give me is they would show perhaps a picture of the human energy field around that person, and then they would show it sort of contracting in and dulling out. The colors aren't as bright and vibrant. They're not as full of energy and vitality. They may be graying a little bit, and maybe there would be some grayish color around the heart center. And so they would show the emotional changes in their person in the form of energy shifts.
Okay.
And
Got
so my belief is that emotion is broadcast in the form of energy, and we can measure brainwave activity in that way. But the animals perceive it on a level just leaps and bounds higher than we as humans do. So all of their receptors for nonverbal communication are super fine-tuned. So they can give me information even about sort of the biochemical activity going on with a person.
Yeah.
So loneliness to them would look like an energy shift.
Wow, that's amazing. So with this kind of other point of view that you're given a window into, and in regards to loneliness, what do you think we can learn from how animals perceive life and operate in life that would help with how humans walk through loneliness?
I think they would teach us that our primary senses are not all the senses that there are,
Mm,
that there is so much more to our reality than we are currently seeing, feeling, and touching.
right.
They would teach us that everything is energy and all that energy is connected all the time. And so, therefore, you are never alone.
Oh, wow.
So you maintain that energetic or spirit connection to all of your friends and family that are living here with you in the physical plane, but also to your departed loved ones.
Mm,
They are only 3 feet away from you, and they're on the other side of the veil, and you have learned as a human that you can't see, hear, or feel through that curtain.
wow.
You've learned that as you grew up. It's not necessarily reality. So they would say you can see, hear, and feel through that veil. You just need to learn it and practice it and get better at it than you are right now. Just like any skill. I have seen the transformation in my clients as they have heard that concept and then experimented with it in their own lives. And the comfort that comes with that sense of peace, that we are never alone. We're connected. And so loneliness is a limited human perception. It's our own perception that we're lacking something.
Is there one exercise that you can think of that could help someone can start exploring that interconnectedness with energy so that they don't feel alone?
I would say two things. I would say a practice of meditation. So learning to be still and focused at the same time. That's a really good place to start because our human lifestyle is so distracted now with technology and responsibility. And like I explained before, the animals stay in the moment. We spend most of our mental time in the past, dwelling on past events, remembering past events, agonizing over them, or predicting future ones. And we spend very little time right here in this present moment,
Right.
clear and settled right here in this experience. So meditation and mindfulness, that is a life tool that I would recommend to everyone. And then I think one of the skills that I needed to practice the most was visualization.
Hmm.
So being able to develop my skill of seeing the imagery in fine detail and staying focused on it. So when I teach classes, I might say, okay, everybody now close your eyes and visualize an apple. We all know what an apple looks like, but when you close your eyes and you intentionally visualize that apple, is it only a red circle in one dimension, or is it the full experience? Is it the three-dimensional, shiny, cool to the touch, smell, shape, shades of color? Is it a full sensory experience? And so developing the skill to visualize in full detail with all the senses, the emotions that go with that. When you see a cool red apple, you have emotions that come up with the vision and with the smell, that whether from childhood experiences, or maybe you cut your finger when you were slicing an apple one day, and apples have always had a negative connotation for you. It's all connected. And so for me, one of the skills that I really needed to practice to communicate with the animals and realize that interconnectedness was the visualization skills. Being able to look deeply, feel deeply, visualize in detail, and then the combination of that visualization experience and the meditation and mindfulness, being in the present moment, you start to have a different experience right here and now.
Oh, wow.
And feeling connected to the bird that's outside the window or the tree in your yard. And then you don't need necessarily the chatter of social media or the television or the radio in the background to make you feel connected.
Yeah.
You can feel that even in complete solitude.
Oh, I love that. I that is amazing, because I often have the chatter of TV on in the background to fill that void.
And I think that is a distraction that our physical human self has learned as a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
So with you being an extrovert and me being an introvert, for example, let's take a photograph of one person walking alone through the forest. They're on a path and you can see into the distance and there's no one around. They don't have an animal with them. They're just in the trees, one person.
Yeah.
My experience for that photograph would be, this is joy, this is peace, this is God, this is connection to Mother Earth. What would your reaction to that photograph be, right?
Right, yeah. My first reaction was, oh my goodness, they're all alone. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe they're all alone, they're lonely, they're not safe because they are all alone,
right.
And they're anxious. My experience would be completely different.
Right.
And so it's perception, it's comparison.
Yeah.
And they're only lonely in comparison to some other measure. And so if the chatter of the television in the background means connection to you, great, do that. But I would encourage people to give thought to, is your social media, you're scrolling through your news feed on your phone or binge watching television programs, does that actually heal your loneliness? Or does it simply distract you temporarily and give you the illusion of connectedness?
Yes.
I personally would say that that's an illusion of connectedness.
Well, I am going to start meditating again, and I'm going to start visualizing again. This has been very inspiring. And I just wanted to thank you for coming and talking about this with me.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah.
I think that our animal companions have so much to teach us about how to be better humans.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And I will have information about how to find you in the comments around the video.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Fuck Loneliness. I'm your host, Sharon Pieczenik. And if you have any questions or comments, please email me at fckloneliness@gmail.com. I look forward to having you with me at the next episode.